Welcome to week 4. This is the first lecture of 3 for week 4. What we're going to be doing this week is we're going to cover 3 different areas. We're going to start by talking a little bit about utility history. Then we're going to follow up by talking about a little bit of the legislation regarding energy. And then finally we're going to start looking at energy estimating techniques. So we're going to start out with talking about utility history. Most of the reason that we're doing energy audits today stems back from actually oil or petroleum products. It's hard to get away from this. It's current or as current today as it was back when energy audits or our first energy crisis happened back in the 70s. So actual oil production started in 1859. Was found in Titusville, Pennsylvania, and the modern oil industry based on the extraction of underground crude is born. So think about that, 1859. By 1928, the Royal Dutch Shell, Standard Oil in New Jersey, which is now Exxon, the Anglo-Persian Oil, which is now BP, formed the first cartel to control oil prices. It didn't take them long. And the Texas Railroad Commission was also involved. So this was by 1928. By 1948, the U.S. is the largest consumer of oil and becomes a net importer of crude. Now, we're primarily at that time importing from Venezuela and the Middle East because of lower production costs. And 2 years later, oil finally surpasses coal as the nation's main source of energy. So this is 1950. In the 1950s, the international oil cartel grows to include 4 more giant corporations. So now we have Texaco, Gulf, Mobil, and SoCal entering in. The cartel at this point is known as the Seven Sisters, and basically these 7 companies produce 80% of the world's oil. And again, this is in the 1950s. By 1960, OPEC was formed, which stands for the Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries. The original members were Iran, Iraq, Kuwait, Saudi Arabia, and Venezuela. Within 12 years, OPEC expanded to 13 countries, which are listed on the slide you see there. Now, in 1973, the Yom Kippur War happened, and Israel ended up making territorial gains. Did not set well with the oil producers, and that same year, OPEC announced that it was going to have a cut in oil production. Now, the interesting thing there is it led to a rapid increase in world oil prices. This is known as the first major oil embargo. Now, oil prices prior to the embargo were about $2.18 a barrel. So think about that. And after the embargo happened, oil shot to $10.95 a barrel. That's a 5-fold increase in oil prices. So you can imagine today what that would happen. If oil was currently going for $100 a barrel and suddenly went to $500 a barrel, you can imagine what would happen to the world economy. Now, again, this is 1973, 1974. Of course, our federal government jumps right on this, and by 1978, they finally passed the first National Energy Act. So it only took them 4 years to get this done. The goal was to reduce oil imports by 1985, increase the use of fuels other than oil and gas, and use energy in a more efficient and equitable way. And I can't help but feel that this sounds amazingly familiar. So this has been an ongoing problem since the mid-70s. And it doesn't sound like we've solved anything yet. So Other things happening after that, after the first National Energy Act of '78, in 1980 we had the Energy Security Act. In 1992 we had the Energy Policy Act. 2005 we had an addition to the Energy Policy Act. 2007 we had the Energy Independence and Security Act. 2008 the Energy and Tax Extenders Act. And then most infamously or recently in 2009 the American Recovery and Reinvestment Act. These all had impacts based all the way back to the original National Energy Act of 1978. Other things to consider right now, major sources of energy, as far as the Department of Energy recorded in 2013. Petroleum was our major source of energy at 36%, followed by natural gas at 27%, coal at 19%, renewables at 10%, which means wind, solar, hydro, anything renewable, and nuclear electrical power 8%. Also by the U.S. Department of Energy, typical commercial buildings usage. In other words, when they went out and surveyed a huge cross-section of commercial buildings where they're using energy, lighting topped the list at 25%, followed by heating at 13%, cooling at 11%, refrigeration at 6%, water heating at 6%, ventilation at 6%, and electronics at 6%. This ends Lecture 4A. When you're ready, you can proceed to Week 4, Lecture 4B. Thank you.